Is Ricky here today with another editing video for you. This week we were talking about corner composition, and so I really wanted to go over, I did share photos that were specific with corner focal points or having kind of interest in the corner of the frame, and that really ties into creating a cohesive, balanced photograph edge to edge. And I have a series here of photos where you can see just that they're very similar, but the angle changes things, the light changes the way it looks, and most importantly, while it's all very subtle, they're all different, and they all show different variations of composition and how that affects the way your eye moves through the photo, which is the most important part to keep in mind. So this first photo here, you see that roughly this plane here and a little bit down here is where things are in focus, but we have light flooding this bottom right corner, a little in the left and a little in the top right, and though that adds interest. So as you look at the first point of interest, the focal point here, your eye kind of fades off to the side, you see the light, and then you go right back to the main subject, and that's the idea. In this photo here, we have more blurred foreground, a little bit of light, but mostly blurred foreground. And then that I don't think is quite as good, but it does take you back in. You see what's in focus, you see the blurred foreground, and it takes you back. So my eyes scan, I kind of see here, I see here, I'm looking at all the edges and corners, and then I see focal point. There's a very shallow depth of field here, as you can see at 1.4, so there's a lot of textural interest, color, and light, which makes this a very autumnal and interesting type of photo, at least I think so. And then this third photo, we have a little bit of blurred foreground, but mostly this is kind of the focal point. Then you see there's some down here, and then we have the rest that's, blurry. Some is a little blurrier than others. But it's kind of hard to tell because the balance to me feels very off. And that's kind of the fun and creative side of this, is that everybody's going to view this differently, but this is simply just how I'm seeing and thinking about corner compositions, how important the edges of the frames are, and of course how important composition is overall. And so here, this is not my favorite composition just because we're in the rule of thirds if we're looking at it horizontally. So if we hit the crop tool and you hit O on your keyboard, it shows you, various compositional techniques, which this photo actually does pretty well as far as how that goes. But there are areas overall I don't love it just because there's more negative space in the center, and it doesn't complete the flow of my eye because there's only interest on the edges, really, and there's no main focal point. Not really, just because the interest is, through here. But you can see how it's divided up and how important that is from each photo. And then we can go over here and see a little how this is balanced a little bit better. There is more focal interest through the center, through each technique. I don't know if all of these have names, but I do know that as I look at it, I can see balance. I can feel like kind of the points of interest. So like, okay, this makes sense. I see why, how it's kind of broken up in different intersections. This is such a great one where this is how your eye tends to flow through photos. Like you can see what's in focus versus what's not in focus, or how things are arranged really play into each other and where our eyes shift. And it's just something that you have to pay attention to as you go, as you're looking through your images, or even looking through the camera and just trying to decide where is that point of interest, how are things coming together. And to me, and this here kind of explains why this one is my favorite. You can see how it's broken up and it fits all of these so well. And to me, that's most cohesive, right? Your eye flows and you see the edges, and it was just, and at this point, the biggest concept is that light plays a factor. So it was just how I had positioned myself with the light coming in front of me behind the tree here. versus shifting to the left a little bit. Here the light was less direct but still behind, I guess slightly to the back left side. And then again, just another shift in perspective. So it really kind of changes how the end result is, which I wanted to take you through. Here was the original image, and I was looking at this and I'm like, man, this is just not very interesting. I don't really love this. But of course, I know that there's a lot of interest here. There's a lot of light, and there's good autumnal colors, and of course I just love that. And you know, it's nothing a little editing can't help bring out the interest and details in. So just a fun one to play with and see what we can do here. I'm just going to kind of go through this really quick and show you roughly how I want to kind of bring out a change in, especially with tone curve. That's really been my main focus lately, is how tone curve can truly affect your editing and can give, so far from my experience of editing, this helps really give you the best personal style. And this is where a lot of photographers who are really good, you'll see them adjust here in tone curve. And it's always so fascinating to see how it's done, because it's just so different for every person. But oftentimes you will see that a lot of similar adjustments are made, but just that it affects everything so differently. Simple S-curves I tend to find work best in here. I don't always go through and adjust the colors because it can be a little more difficult, I think, if you're not super familiar with it, but not impossible to figure out. Should have done this first. Always changes how it looks. It's always, I'm so used to my do me first presets automatically, you know, placing that on there, that I don't always think anymore to do that first. And I need to be better at paying attention to that, because by the time if I were to finish editing the photo and I saw it, I would just be like, oh, there's something wrong. Like, I don't know, I can always see it now. So it's kind of fun to challenge myself. I'm like, did I do all the things that I normally do here? Let's go back through. And kind of see how in this case, how light really plays a role in this photo. And then as you adjust your tone curve, how it affects how each color plays the part, you know. And so tone curve here, we're adjusting in each panel. You adjust, these are the green tones on the light side and the green tones on the dark side, and it adjusts just those colors versus you know, how its effect on the whole photo. So every green in the shadows or every green in the lights are going to be changed, and that changes for, you know, that goes for every single one. Like, doesn't that just feel so autumnal to you? Obviously this is like not exactly my personal editing style, but I do love to just see how different I can make it, and how, like, just kind of play and have fun and figure out what I do like. You know, like, to me that isn't a bad photo. It's a little over edited looking, but nonetheless it's still beautiful, and again, very seasonal toned, which is the idea, where I really want that look. So, and then the idea, it helps copy and paste. And then this was the edit, so let's see how different that was. Quite a bit different. It's kind of funny how, and this is where light plays a factor, you know, if your light is different from one photo to the next, even if you're shooting on all the same settings and everything, your editing, the overall results will be completely different because the light. So what I did in the first photo doesn't work for the second, just because the light was so different there. So I definitely encourage you guys to think about the edges of the frame, consider how that does play a role in your photo. I do love to see corner compositions that really just challenge your perspective and how your overall image is balanced out. And it's a really important key that is so often overlooked in photography. And you just have to practice. You have to, train your eye to see it, and it's an easily overlooked thing just because you're not always going to have the time or the patience to be so mindful about everything you're doing, or about how every element is in the photo. But especially when you have the chance to get out and shoot with intention, and the more you do that and the more you practice, the better off you will be to create a good habit of making that happen all the time. So you want that to challenge you while you have time to be challenged, and to work through intention. And then the more you practice that, the more habitual it will become. And then when you are working kind of quickly, you can go through and not have to think about it so much. It becomes muscle memory. So I'd be curious to hear what you guys think about each photo, and like which one do you like best, and how does that affect how you would shoot. Do you like the light blur? I know that's a technical flaw, but it's something that artistically I really enjoy, but not everybody does. So I'd be curious to hear which composition you like the best, and how you do with, going outside to shoot with composition in mind, with focusing on corner elements. And I hope you found this helpful, and I will see you next week.